Waiting. We got the foot loose with the foot man. Do you want to be the foot man, Quentin Tarantino style?
No. Hey, no. I'll take it.
Philip Mangan. Is that how you say it? Mangan.
You got it. You got it pretty much right.
Mangan.
It's more Mangan. It's Irish, Mangan, but yeah.
I figured it's not Mangan. But...
Nah, that'd be the easy one.
I'm gonna turn the footloose off before we get sued because they're always coming after the little guys. So you're actually not too far from me right now. You're in Colorado. You're probably 40 minutes away from me down in Denver.
Yeah, I'm in like downtown Denver. So.
Nice. So it's a nice looking house you got going on.
Yeah, I'm actually staying at a friend's house right now. So it's a beautiful spot to spend a couple days, and the weather's been great here. So thankful for that.
Yeah, it's been pretty awesome. Maybe you brought the good weather with you. Hopefully, you gotta stick around a little longer.
I like to think that.
And we are recording this on Memorial Day. So thank you for taking the time on a national holiday. And again, always grateful for our military, always offering discounts to them for any of my services in the fit care world of health, longevity, wellness. Those guys definitely deserve extra attention. But moving on from that, we'll talk to you, Philip Mangan, from Vivobarefoot. And we made the connection here because kind of crazy. I was always a fan of Vivobarefoot during COVID. I ordered my first pair, and they took like 4 months to get here from London to Colorado. Wow. I think that was when there was like a boat stuck in the Suez Canal or the Panama Canal or something. That was a whole thing. I don't think the shoes were on that boat, but I don't know. Could have been.
Yeah, I wasn't with the company at the time, so I couldn't give you a straight answer on that. But I could imagine, there's a lot of logistic issues with everything then. So
yeah, it was a little crazy. And then the crazier part is literally our neighbor right across from our last house before we moved here, about 20 minutes away in Superior, Colorado. Cedric. Very nice guy. So we connected with him, and I noticed he was always wearing Vivobarefoot shoes, and I was like, hey, let me ask you about that. Turns out he's a pretty big deal in the company. And so when I reached out to him about talking barefoot shoes on the podcast, he said, actually, let me get you this guy because he knows what he's doing. He's got all the good sayings. That's what he's here for. So tell us a little bit about your background, man. What brought you to this point?
Well, what brought me to Vivo was I got my certified personal training certification. Sorry, personal training certification. So that kind of just opened my eyes up to training in a different way, and how our bodies work, and which led me to discovering the benefits of going barefoot. So I would actually be at the gym doing a lot of exercises barefoot because I realized I was videoing myself doing an exercising and sending it to another friend who's also a trainer, and he was just like, yeah, your ankle's collapsing because it's not strong enough and all this stuff. And it made me really start seeing the benefits of that and found Vivobarefoot from it. And once I tried out their shoes, honestly, I was in love. I mean, honestly, it was kind of like at the time I was doing full-time modeling and acting, and doing a lot of blogging and trying to build up my Instagram. So I was like, I'm just gonna start tagging them as much as possible, hope to be an ambassador for the brand, and ended up getting into the ambassador network and was probably been an ambassador for about 4 years before I got with the company. So it's kind of been a dream come true to kind of work for a brand that I've been passionate about, and been doing everything in their shoes for the past 4 or 5 years.
Nice. And those of you listening on the audio only, he is a good-looking man. The model thing was not a joke. He's a good-looking, as I made him choke on his water.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. So moving on from that. So that's what got you to Vivobarefoot. So we're here to talk about a little bit. I'm a doctor of physical therapy. This is a podcast about health. I am a huge advocate for barefoot shoes, minimalist shoes. And one of the biggest questions I get, and I'd love to hear your take on it. I have a few current kind of clunky, not necessarily answers, but resources right now for how people go from this big trend. And a lot of folks end up getting switched to Hoka shoes when they have plantar fasciitis. There's the Hokas, there's the On Cloud, which are super cushiony and cloudy. And then there's the Crocs also that kids are wearing. It's all all the fashion. And I keep saying, we're going to see a lot more orthopedic things coming down the line, whether that's evidence-based, whether that's my own, biases, whatever. But the question is, when I have that patient, and again, they're willing to switch to a more minimalist shoe. And a lot of times in the clinic, I'm either wearing Vivobarefoot, or I might be wearing more of a CrossFit type shoe that's more zero drop, minimal in that regard. And I use those as something, and they look at it and they're like, whoa, that's like very different. They can see the difference, obviously, between the two. But so the question becomes, is there a good resource? And I haven't even explored the Vivobarefoot. I'm just becoming more of an ambassador with you guys, so I'm excited for that to build, and I'm hoping that kind of springboards some things here. But are there resources on the website? The only thing I've been using right now is correcttoes.com, which is, for anyone not familiar, is a toe spacing little thing like you get if you're getting a pedicure, they put the little toe spacers between your toes, and you can get those. You can walk around in them, you can work out in them. It's a little clunky. And they have a few resources where they had recommended shoes that they recommend Vivobarefoot as one of their main shoes. But nice. Then they'll also have a little bit of a website, but it's a little hard to get to. I can find it every now and then. It takes me a few minutes to jump on there, and then it recommends, like, okay, go from this shoe, like a Hoka shoe, to an Ultra, which is a more flat-ish shoe, more natural type shoe, and then eventually you can go to Vivobarefoot. And they have, I think, some recommendations of like 10%, where there's like 1 hour 3 times a week, and then 1 hour 7 times a week kind of thing. So do you have a better thought process there?
Well, no, I think you need to ease into it anyways. I mean, I think you can't just jump into barefoot shoes and kind of do the same physical activity you've been doing before. I think that's why a lot of runners you don't see transfer over to barefoot shoes, because say you're up at, like the marathon level, the ultra marathon levels, even like the crazier ones, you're not just, you got to basically start from scratch again, kind of in a way. I mean, I saw it through myself. I mean, I started running 5Ks and I've done 10Ks in them. I'm working my way up to a half marathon, and it takes time. So yeah, I mean, most people, they don't want to take the time to go down that route. But I do think, so I have like my whole family wearing them, and my dad, he wears them just to the office, and he wears them probably about like 60-70% of the time, I'd say. And, Vivobarefoot has spent a lot of money doing like scientific research. And one of the things is, it's like, you don't have to be in them all the time. I believe it's like between like 60, if you're in them like 60-70% of the time over like a 6-month period, you'll see an increase in your foot strength, by I think 50 or 60%. Pardon if my numbers are a little off, but you will see a big difference over time. But you can't run before you walk, and I think it takes some time getting used to them, and it just really depends on how much activity you're doing in them. So if you're not big into physical activity and you just go for walks, I don't think it's a bad idea to start, hey, let's try them out 1 or 2 days a week and just see how they feel. But it's like anything. I mean, it's gonna feel different at first. It's gonna feel uncomfortable probably at first, because you're so used to the comfort of these big, thick soled shoes. But over time, you'll develop the connection. So I always say I choose connection over comfort. And I think a lot of people are opening up their eyes to that in many different ways. And me personally, that was kind of how I like went down into the route of even getting my personal training certification. It literally was like, I want to choose connection over just feeling comfortable. And I put myself out of the comfort zone as much as I can to question if I think I know something is right or not, And I think we just have to stay open-minded into trying something new and giving it time. And I think it's all good things come with patience. That's the best way to put it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll share also, the listeners might appreciate this, especially if you guys were around I think it was around 2008, because it was around the time I graduated. I got my doctorate in 2008, and I started in a busy New York City practice. And the book Born to Run came out. So I can't tell how old you are, because you're a very good looking man. So I can't tell if you're old enough to know that book. You might know it from like previous,
I actually just read it. Sorry to cut you off, but I've heard about it for like over the years, and then I just read it, and I'll let you guess my age right now. How about that?
I'm gonna say 32.
I'm a 40 years old. 40
Oh,
years,
okay.
40 years young. I'll say.
Young, there it
Yeah,
is.
there we go.
I turned 40 later this year, so yeah,
Nice.
I was like, yeah, I just had a kid, so I got a little more wrinkle, I think, going.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you have a little bit more of the kid age. So
There you go. There you go. But that's great. That's great.
thank
And
you.
yeah, there's obviously for anyone, I talk about this stuff on a lot of my other episodes and my other show, Man Better Podcast, where there's a big difference between chronological age and biological age. So how well we take care of ourselves. Again, he's drinking water. I'm drinking an old fashioned cider. So that'll affect our cells. That's just a fact of science.
Yeah, it's everything you put in your body. I'm a big believer in that. Not just what you eat, what you put in your mind.
Absolutely. So to finish the story about Born to Run, anyone not familiar, Chris McDougall, I believe was his name. You just read it, so you should be able to confirm that.
No, that's correct.
Yeah. So he made the argument that again, our ancestors ran. He talks about some of the African tribes that run completely barefoot, or they'll just strap something just to the bottom of their foot. Just to provide a little bit of extra skin protection from rocks and things like that. And yeah, we are born to run was his argument. The thing that I experienced though in 2008, around that time as a new physical therapist in New York City, was tons of people got that book. And as you already alluded to, went from big cushiony shoes that again could be, back then there weren't Hokas. Hokas are just every time I see them, it makes me laugh because they're so cushioned. And the analogy I always make is it's like wearing mittens on your hand. It's just hard to live life with mittens.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it just shuts down your muscles. When I started skiing, moving out here to Colorado, I didn't even want big cushiony gloves, even though it would probably keep my hands warmer. I wanted something I could feel the ski pole with and even catch myself on the ground. So anyway. But back then, again, we were in a very busy New York City clinic and a very popular one. And so after that book came out, we saw tons of stress fractures because people switched from completely cushiony shoes, the old New Balance Asics, more the traditional running shoe, to some version of Barefoot. Back then, Vivo, to my knowledge, was not around. Not something I had heard of then, but the Vibram Five Fingers, if anyone remembers those, they're still around. And they look like the little gloves on your feet. And so everyone switched to those. In New York City, I would see people at the New York City Marathon, and I used to work at the finish line and catch people kind of collapsing across the finish line. And then funny thing about that is most people just overhydrated. That was the most common medical condition that I caught, was overhydration.
Oh, wow.
And just because when you drink so much and you sweat so much, you're losing all of the sodium in your body. So literally would have table salt packets in my pocket. And we would just rip a few open, throw it down their throat, and they'd be like, "I can see color again, yay!" But the point is, yeah, we would see people wearing no shoes because there wasn't a great option for barefoot running back then. So people would be running the streets of New York completely barefoot, which was pretty fascinating to see. But yeah, we just saw tons of tibial stress fractures, foot stress fractures, because to change the loading, as we were just talking about, from a physical therapy perspective, especially orthopedic perspective. Doing too much too soon, overloading the joint is the number one way to cause injury. In fact, it's probably the only real way we can define injury is when load exceeds capacity. So, if I'm not used to doing 100 pull-ups, if I can only do one pull-up and all of a sudden someone's challenging me to do 100 pull-ups, it is Memorial Day, so a lot of CrossFitters are doing Murph out there for that. So it made me think of the 100 pull-ups, which is the first kind of part of, or the second part of the workout after a 1 mile run. So yeah, it was an interesting thing. That was my quick Born to Run story. That I still think there's a lot of lessons to take away from that. On top of the fact, again, one of my biggest things I tell people is too much too soon is the worst thing you could do to your body.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's great advice. I mean, it's funny, after I got my personal training certification, I just kind of reevaluated how I was doing everything, and I think that's the thing. We're just throwing around weights. We're trying to copy what people are doing, and we're not like treating our bodies in a connected way. And I think it really all starts with the knowledge and getting taught the proper way. And I can imagine it's tough. It's tough out there right now because it's just flooded with information coming at you from all angles. So it's you have to find the right resources. And fortunately, Vivobarefoot, they spend a lot of time doing like they're big into. They have a Vivo Health network now. So they offer a lot of courses. They offer a barefoot fundamentals course, and it actually gives you like certain exercises that you can do to strengthen your feet, and just little like mobility exercises. It's called toga. So, and I think that's the thing you got to probably do when you start off, is really kind of not just throw on the shoes. You gotta like, look at like, how can I actually help strengthen them rather than just from walking around. And just because you're moving forward and backwards, yeah, it's helpful, but I think I'm still, it's tough for me to do the toga sometimes. You got to practice. It's like anything, you got to practice. I wear the toe spacers too, and I usually do standing desk, like I'm standing right now, and I usually have this like mat, that I will, step on, and it kind of is like almost like a massage, but it's like rough, and it's just trying to activate those muscles. And so I think there's a lot of different things you can do, but it's just like finding the right resources. And yeah, there's a lot of resources on the Vivo Health website, so I would definitely highly recommend checking out at least the Barefoot Fundamentals course. And I think they actually, if you buy a pair of shoes, I think they're either giving it to you now with it, or maybe like 50% off. So then it would only be like a $20 extra course, I think, or something.
Yeah, I definitely saw something about that at some point. We'll double check the details, and we can get that put in the show notes, hopefully there. And again, as I'm going to be hopefully an ambassador as well soon, you get me my code tomorrow. And we can put that in the show notes. Yeah. So for anyone not familiar with toga, I'm going to throw my foot up for the video audience and see if we got the flip there. The idea is to, be able to interdigitate and see if you can kind of move your big toe without moving the rest of your toes. And space them out, pull them apart. And we use that in physical therapy all the time for folks dealing with any kind of injury, really, in the lower extremity, all the way up to the hip and low back. It takes a little harder for someone with a low back injury to buy in, but sometimes they see how quickly that all connects. I've just avoided, a lot of my colleagues do go right to the shoe insert and the arch support and trying to really correct things that way. And again, it provides some short-term relief, which I don't think is necessarily wrong. Again, that comfort piece you were talking about, choose connection over comfort. But yeah, I talk to folks, I get them barefoot. I get them doing single leg RDLs, almost every client, barefoot. And it's when they finally understand how to like grab the ground with, grab the floor with their foot, and they can really feel that kind of tripod of the foot between the ball of the foot and then the heel, doing a dynamic activity that, so, and I have clients that I work with once a week, and I get them to sign up for a package for a year, and they'll come to my garage here in Colorado. And it might take 16 weeks for them to be like, oh my God, I feel it. Like, and because they might not be practicing it every day on their own, but if we kind of even that consistency of once a week, I get everyone barefoot in the garage, and I encourage everyone to be barefoot as much as possible. That's where the Vivobarefoot is a phenomenal option. And as much as this is a plug for Vivobarefoot, there's plenty of other barefoot shoes. I think at the end of the day, even though you're representing Vivobarefoot, and I am as well. I think at the end of the day, if you guys can, whoever's listening, go from a more cushiony shoe down to more minimalist, to the extent of barefoot, I think that's a phenomenal thing. And I'll share, I'll give credit to the Ready State, Kelly Starrett and Juliet Starrett, who I've had on this podcast. Lucky enough to have a connection to those guys. They're two of the biggest game changers in the industry. And they always advocate for once a week, go out and walk barefoot if you can. They say maybe it's more realistic in the summer, but whatever makes sense for you. Obviously, watch out for the natural obstacles out there. But even if it's a 20-minute walk or even a 10-minute walk, start wherever you need to. But get out there and go barefoot, connect to the ground. That's that whole connection you're talking about. It's a really powerful thing. And again, it's not comfortable. And your feet might be, really dark and dirty after that. But it's something you should be prepared for, and the benefits significantly outweigh the risks, in my opinion. So yeah, I include that at least once a week, completely barefoot, even though most of the week I'm going in barefoot shoes like Vivobarefoot.
Yeah, if you can't be really barefoot, be Vivobarefoot, and or of your shoe of choice that is barefoot. Of course, we'd like to see people in Vivobarefoot, but the key here is really getting into or getting out of your shoes and getting more connected. And I think, you've heard of grounding before, and, going out there and, walking around in different elements. I think that's really the key. Not just walking down on concrete every day and barefoot, getting into the grass, into the rocks and all that different things. So really kind of changing it up, and you'll start seeing the difference over time. You just, like you said, even if you do it once a week, it's better than nothing.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there's even a few gyms I've seen, more kind of holistic gyms, that as soon as you walk in, they'll have a few little boxes with like different rocks, different sand, different grass, turf, what have you. So you can just kind of, again, not just ground yourself, but anyone familiar with acupressure as well? Like there's a lot of nerve endings in the feet. So it's important that we start waking that up and kind of resetting and undoing the damage of being in. My friend Teresa Larson, Dr. Teresa Larson, is a physical therapist. She calls them foot prisons, the traditional shoes. So she says, yeah. And she was actually just on Mayim Bialik's breakdown. I just saw that today. I was very excited for her. Apparently they're old friends. Anyone not familiar with Mayim Bialik? Again, you're of the age that you should remember Blossom.
Yes, I do.
So anyone not familiar with that podcast, she's got one of the more popular podcasts out there. And I'm a big fan of that podcast. I was very excited to see my friend, Dr. Teresa Larson, who's also been on this podcast. But yeah, she talks about foot prisons, and again, just getting out there and starting to wake up those nerve endings. Let's talk a little bit about the research that Vivobarefoot has done, and as well as just some of the barefoot research out there. I'm familiar with the concept of foot strengthening and just, again, wearing more minimalist shoes certainly will strengthen your feet. That's almost common sense. I appreciate that those studies are out there, but sometimes I'm like, why do we need a study to prove that? Like it's, but it's clear that that's the case.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's the case just because, again, when we've been doing something for so long, I mean, it's just, we're accustomed to it. And so it's like, to switch that, it almost kind of is like questioning who we are in a way. Like, hey, like, wait, we've been doing the wrong thing for this long. Like, no one likes to feel that way. You kind of lose a sense of self in a way. And I think that's why people are not really open to changing sometimes, is because they kind of don't want to believe that they've been told wrong. Because we like to think that, like, we're getting the truth,
And it took a critical mass for surgeons to not smoke cigarettes in
exactly
the operating room. And I hear that on a few podcasts I listen to of like, what do you think is going to be something that, 20 years from now, hopefully something like, wearing crazy Hoka shoes, unless you do like, we actually had a visitor over, and they had like brittle bones, and they had multiple fractures in their feet. So I was like, okay, I'm not going to give you shit about wearing big cushiony shoes. Obviously, long term, I still think you should find a way to strengthen those bones, those feet. A lot of that could go down to nutrition, of osteoporosis type concepts where your vitamin D is not strong enough. We're not loading the joints, the bones from an orthopedic standpoint. Again, there's a lot more there. But yeah, so coming back to it, I do think, hopefully 20 years from now, that's something that we can look back on and say, barefoot is it's just everybody's barefoot.
No, I mean, I hope so too, honestly. To be honest, I think if people just give it a chance, I think it's really about like the educational factor, like yourself, like, having people in our network that are educating people properly. And I think it all starts, it's different between, hey, this shoe looks cool, and, you see a celebrity in it and you just say, hey, I want to look like them. There's an educational piece that really is the important part of it, of why the benefits, and kind of being able to come at them in a professional way of saying, like, these are the benefits, or this is my experience with it. That's when I think you open up people's minds. And I think that's really the direction that I know I'm at least trying to get the people in our network to go in. Because I do know, for me, everything has been like, any changes that I've made, it's because I've opened myself up to the education of it. I went vegan 5 years ago, and I was just really into nutrition. Like, how can you make this work? And I did a lot of research myself, and I know it, like, the doctors still are not kind of completely with it. I went to get my physical at 40, and I could tell the doctor right away was like, I told her I was vegan, she was like, oh, you're probably anemic, and you're probably this, and all my blood levels came back fine, like all my vitamin levels. So
Yeah, I mean, and that's a whole nother can of worms, and that's a conversation I'd love to dive into. I don't know if it, it goes great with this.
Well, no, I'm just saying,
Yeah,
like, as in far as like
yeah.
the
Well,
connection side, opening yourself to the knowledge of things, and
right,
maybe, and not saying that works for everyone, but I'm saying I was able to be open myself up to changing in a way, and I think
yeah.
there's different ways that you can kind of open yourself up, just
Right.
considering it.
And just and that's the thing in the medical system, me being a part of that system right now, looking at it, it's just don't squat below 90 degrees, not because it's no one should squat below 90 degrees, but because it's the easiest thing I can say to you as a doctor, to tell you to, get you out of knee pain. It's when you squat below 90 that you have short-term knee pain, or again, you have plantar fasciitis. What's the easiest thing we could do? Of course, the common advice there is, rub the bottom of your foot with an ice bottle and frozen bottle, and also put a heel insert in, because it's just shortening the gastroc and the whole tissue even more. And it's gonna, again, kind of go into it's like saying, hey, you have posture problems and you're rounded back. What are we gonna do to make you feel better? Is put you more into a rounded position. And again, it's that comfort that it's short-term symptom control, and that's always kind of the joke, the cynical way we look at healthcare and say it's symptom care. It's not healthcare. No one cares about your health. When we really understand and define what health is, it's managing symptoms, it's managing pain, it's managing sickness, and that system, of course, without sounding too old man yelling at the wind, it's definitely much more of a machine that, again, they benefit from keeping us all sick. So, again, and that's the part too, where I do think when I speak to patients, like, they're open to, okay, cool, minimalist shoes. Like, I get the concept, I get the mittens, analogy, but I do think that they need a little more hand holding. And like you said, it's a very unnatural thing. Like, again, it's like, what, smoking is bad for me? Like, I haven't heard anything about this. And the crazy thing about smoking, I don't know if you know this, is like, there's never been a single study that can truly show causation between smoking and deleterious effects on the health, because causation is very hard to prove in a research perspective. But there's obviously so much, pardon the pun, but smoke around it, that there's just so many problems. And they just, at some point, the scientific community had to say, like, okay, smoking's pretty bad. Like, we can observationally say that, epidemiologically, like, logically say that, but it takes a lot of critical mass to change a huge ship like that. And again, the money involved with the entire tobacco industry and all that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, I agree. I think it's, and it has to start somewhere. So, I mean, and I think, like you said, hopefully, 20 years from now, maybe this is more of the starting point, even though, like, when that book Born to Run came out, what is that, 2007? It's
Something
like
that, yeah.
maybe we thought that was the start of it, and at least it did start it in some sort of way. But, look at that gap already. It's been 15 years, 16 years since and yeah, sure, things have picked up a little bit, but I'm sure, you don't see the majority of the masses,
Right. Well, but yeah, let's talk about those statistics that I'm unfortunately very familiar with. Is the latest I recall is 12% of the American population is metabolically healthy, based on the research put out there was 5 major metrics of health. And so there's probably some people who are still healthy and don't have some of those metrics, and we can go into the depths of that. But 12% of the population is metabolically healthy. So I think when a book like Born to Run comes out, it might reach maybe that 12%, and even of that 12%, wearing barefoot shoes is still considered, a little bit of a taboo. It's like you're saying, it's so unnatural. I go into gyms and I see folks in gyms, and it's still, something like CrossFit, which grew tremendously in popularity, did push a lot of that narrative. And again, they're almost kind of slowly actually adding a little more cushion to their shoes. They still believe in, I think, in the concept of like a natural foot, but they, for some reason, want to keep adding cushion, because I think, again, it's that comfort level, and not being, especially for new people coming into it. Noble is one of the bigger companies. They took over the CrossFit Games, for instance. I saw them at the NFL draft. They're definitely growing, coming out of this like kind of grassroots little company that came out of CrossFit. And it's been fun to see their growth. But again, they used to have much more minimalist shoes, and now they almost doubled their last.
Oh,
I don't
wow,
know.
really?
Yeah, it was, first of all, they're aesthetically to me way worse. I'm like the whole like it was way cool looking when they were more minimalist. But yeah, the doubling of the kind of cushion, I was like, wow. And I don't know if it's just a trend, or I'd be curious to hear. I know Ben Bergeron's involved with that company. He's a big guy in the CrossFit space. I haven't ever heard him talk about that design change, but it was very interesting.
Is that all their shoes, or is it just like a certain line? Like, do they have it like where, hey, we make some with a little bit of more cushion, and then we make some that are
No,
more
I
cushion?
think it pretty much all of their newer models for this year, it all happened in the last year, seem to have doubled. Well, they have running shoes, which have always been pretty cushioned,
Mhm.
even though they're more of a minimalist brand. But again, they were in that CrossFit space where I would tell people like, oh, you can get any of the CrossFit shoes as a minimalist shoe, including Nike had the Metcon, which they're also
Yep.
a little cushiony. Reebok had the Nano, which again, I worked with Reebok for a lot of years, so I actually like pretty much got only free Reebok shoes for a long time. So it was a nice perk of working with them. But yeah, I like most of their shoes. They became like stiffer in each iteration. They would come out with a new model like the iPhone every year, and I found that they were the later models got less and less kind of pleasant to wear. That was just me. I always think like, shouldn't each year be better? Like the iPhone gets better with each iteration, to my understanding, but
Yeah, in some way. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And again, in terms of the Nanos specifically for Reebok that I was familiar with, I felt like maybe they were getting more technologically, like they were adding other features, but I personally felt they were less and less comfortable. They actually re-released the 2.0, even though they now have like at least 12. I think they're up to the 12.0, and so they re-released the 2.0 because it was still the most popular. I think of all their models, because it was like a very minimalist shoe. It's the one I probably wear the most. That the 2.0 and the 4.0, and I think any old school CrossFitter like myself is kind of in that same boat. The other old school ones, if you're not familiar, for just a quick history lesson for the kids, is the Innovates, and they actually were trail running shoes, and they were just very colorful. So they had this like nice natural combination for early CrossFit where they were very minimalist. Way less than even what Reebok ended up coming out with, and I think Reebok felt like they needed a little more cushion so you could go run with it. But the Innovates were pretty minimalist, and again, they were built as trail running shoes. They're models that again were very popular in CrossFit. So yeah, again, they were cool looking, but very minimalist. And again, it was that, and you would see people back in the day even doing CrossFit in the Vibram 5 fingers, and again, it was just like that weird cult of people over there, like we were talking about the norms. So it was an interesting sociological thing.
Yeah, I mean, it would be interesting to hear why the changes are made in the shoes to go from barefoot to more thickness to it. Yeah, I would just be curious to hear the reasoning.
Yeah. My just again observational, like totally out there, amateur whatever thing would be that I think people because Noble is growing. That was my point of bringing up, like the fact that they were at the NFL draft and they took over the CrossFit Games. I think they're really growing as a brand, and I think that possibly the response was like, these are too minimalist, and so I think they needed to add that cushion. Again, aesthetically, I think they ruined it because they were the cool ones. They would have all these cool designs, and they would have like flowers on it and all this kind of cool stuff. But yeah, I don't know, the aesthetic to me with the double thing. And again, maybe in my mind, I'm like, I want more minimalist, but it looks sleeker as well. Like, I don't know, that's a whole thing, but it'd be interesting to find out. I'd be curious. I do have a few connections in the industry. I kind of want to reach out. I have a feeling my friend David Tao, who's the founder of Barbend, might know and or can be connected to someone who does. He's a pretty big deal, that guy. Lucky to have had him on the show too. But
Nice.
yeah. So yeah, what's next for Vivobarefoot? Catch us up. Give us a little closing, maybe last thought about barefoot shoes. It sounds like there's a lot of positive things happening.
Yeah, I mean, I think for what's next, like with Vivobarefoot, I mean, obviously I think the company as a whole, we're trying to push the educational side of it, and I think finding people like yourself and bringing them into the network is really kind of how you grow that, and where people make a lasting change, like I said. So I think I don't want to just say, hey, like, let's bring people in the network and help push Vivobarefoot, and that don't really know what they're talking about. And then people have a bitter taste in their mouth and they try the barefoot shoes and then they just end it because they're not getting educated properly. But, I think the other side of things is like really the connecting back to nature and really, focusing on the outdoors side of the business and, with hiking shoes. And, I think that's been something that I know is being talked about a lot, and really, getting people knowledgeable in that sector, because, obviously it's kind of easy to go into the health professionals and be like, this is the benefits, but, hey, how do you connect to the people that are, big into hiking and, whatever it's, trail running or any sort of
Yeah.
thing like that, and I think it really is the trying to find, like, and like I said, educating them in some sort of way. But, I always say, like, when I'm hiking, it's the same way as like that. It's like, if you're going to be, we go to hiking probably to want to feel more connected to nature. So how do you feel more connected to nature? It all starts with the footwear, because if you're actually able to touch the ground and feel the ground, you're gonna grow your connection. And I think that's really the mindset that is needed, of like, hey, how can we connect better to these experiences that we're having outdoors? Because, I think a lot of people are craving time away from the computers and getting out. And I think, what better way to do it than, going barefoot and really kind of connecting everything in the body and the mind,
Yeah. I'm going to put in the intro, so anyone listening to this for the podcast, before before we start, I'm going to make sure to remind them, if they're walking and listening to this, that they should just take their shoes off and at least do that as an inspirational piece for
Yeah.
for that. And I mentioned the ready state again. I'll just say again, one of the big things that I think they're pushing, and this slowly creeping up in this the kind of longevity, fitness, health space, is the importance of walking in general. So, get out there and walk. One of the things I do with every client, I recommend after every meal that as much as possible, they walk for 10 minutes. It's going to help digestion. It's going to just get you out there and increase that walking time. That's 30 minutes of walking that you otherwise wouldn't have done. And if you can do that barefoot, that's just so much more powerful for our long-term health. Burn a lot of calories, all that fun stuff. We can cite all the statistics. So yeah, man.
I love what you're saying. I think, you just I always used to say, like, when I was, training people, I was really kind of training them on more of the habits, wellness habits. And it was just like, you don't need to be going for long runs, and you just move your body. That's what we need to start doing more, is moving our bodies. And I think, us walking whenever you can, standing at your desk. So you try to, just focus on your posture, those little things, and just kind of are what makes the difference. And, starting somewhere and trying to find a community that is doing things that you want to be part of. Because I think that allows it to, be a little bit easier to take part in these things, is like when you have support.
Yeah, the community piece is huge for sure. It helps to have a dog. I can take my dog on a few walks a day for sure. One of the things you're talking about, just to I know we're kind of got to wrap up. You got to head out soonish. Non-exercise activity thermogenesis, NEAT, and that's just people fidgeting and kind of even doing calf raises when they're sitting, or if they're at a standing desk, just that shifting, moving around, that natural bit. So there's an interesting piece of that. It's not about just doing 30 minutes in the gym. And again, I keep stealing other people's lines. I'm just going to take credit for them at this point. Is one of the worst ways to get stiff is go do a CrossFit class. Go do whatever fitness thing you want to do. F45, you did great 45 minutes, an hour of intense working out, and then you're going to sit for 10 hours. Like that's one of the worst things you could do. So yeah, it's move more and move better. And that's credit over to Gray Cook, who came up with the FMS, functional movement screen. And they talk about that all the time. And yeah, I believe in pushing in like an annual orthopedic checkup, the same way you're supposed to go to the dentist twice a year, which they did a great job of marketing. Finding ways to connect and check in with somebody who can help guide you on these behaviors and activities we're all capable of doing, going, getting more barefoot and just being like, hey, between now and 6 months from now, I just want you to build up how much time you're walking, and having that kind of check-in, accountability, community, all that stuff is vital.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's, like I said, starting somewhere and really kind of moving your body as much as you can, whenever you can, is really the key.
Absolutely. I feel like we didn't dive deep enough on the science of barefoot shoes, but again, I feel, to me, it's so logical.
Yeah, yeah. And honestly, I could quote science all day, but
Right.
is that really? I think it really is about the experience. Is really
Yeah.
like because think about how much like science there is around different things out there, and people don't change.
Yeah.
So you can do studies on like, well, why aren't people changing?
Yeah.
It just because they hear something doesn't really inspire change.
Well, hopefully, hearing this inspires some kind of change. Go eat some broccoli. Go have some liver, unless you're vegan.
I think just hearing it in the right hearing it in the right way, I think is what the inspires the change.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I've studied change psychology for a very, very long time. It's definitely a major part of personal training, healthcare, motivational interviewing, all these cool aspects to it. Precision Nutrition does a great job of that. I have their level 1 certification,
Nice.
and I'm considering their level 2. But they do some great stuff as well. And so, yeah, habit change really seems to be the problem. And yeah, we're in this crisis of healthcare, and it's just getting worse and worse every year. And again, the statistics are there, but at the end of the day, it's whoever's listening to this. What's it going to take for them to change? Again, my other podcast, Demand Better podcast, I'm saying demand better from Barefoot shoes, demand better from all shoes, demand better from the healthcare system, demand better from your personal trainer, demand better from physical therapists. The system is messed up, and it really comes down to the individual. Again, connecting to something they're hearing from the right person, hopefully the good-looking Philip Mangan.
Hopefully it's from yourself. I mean, you seem very passionate about what you're doing, and I think it falls right into what we're doing. So
I
that's
switched to the kombucha to feel a little healthier.
There you go. I ran out of water, so I'm going to fill this up again. But not.
There you go.
But kombucha, good choice.
Yeah. So we'll leave it off there. Tell folks best places to connect with you, Philip.
Yeah, you can connect with me. If you want to connect with me on my social media, connect with me there. It's Philip Anthony Mangan. But go to the website. I think that's probably the best way to put it. And if you have any questions, feel free to DM me on my social media. I'm happy to answer. It makes me more fulfilled being able to give people knowledge that I have and that I've learned along the way.
Absolutely. Love it. Appreciate your time on this Memorial Day 2023. Even we should have done this in person, but yeah, sometimes those in-person ones don't sound as good. I gotta say, I've tried it a few times. So
I've tried it too, and I do think sometimes it's just
unless you have the full setup and like the studio.
I was gonna say if you're in a studio, it definitely sounds good quality, and it is kind of nice to be talking to someone like it's a conversation rather than on a computer. But I'm sure you do Zoom calls a lot and stuff like that. I mean, I do them all the time for the company, so it seems normal to me now, at least.
Yeah, I have one right after we're done here. I'm going to be assessing somebody's movement, which I hate doing virtually, but sometimes it's necessary. All that said, appreciate you being on here. Hopefully we have the code and everything, and my ambassadorship.
we'll get you going, and definitely I'll make sure you have it by the time
And so if folks want to help put my child through college, I'll get a little percentage of all that, and if you want to get those Barefoot shoes, we'll get you going. Again, Vivobarefoot's an amazing place to start. If you need help transitioning, again, that's where health coaching comes in. Again, I always say it's got to be part of a global, holistic picture. That's why we look at your movement patterns. How are you moving? Like I said, I really want folks to understand this annual orthopedic screen, and it's something the profession and the healthcare industry and all that. There's all sorts of nonsense. So I could ramble about that for a while. I have on other podcasts, so I'm going to not do that here. All that said, thank you, my friend. Enjoy your time in Colorado. If I can get down there, between babysitting my own child and work and all that, I'd love to come down to Denver, maybe find a way to get down to ACSM conference going on right now.
Yeah, ACSM this week. So if you're in the area, stop by.
Yeah, American College of Sports Medicine for those not familiar. And all that said, we're gonna footloose it out of here, but we'll talk to you next time. Thanks for your time, buddy. And
thanks a lot, Bo.